At this time, I would like to open the meeting of the Carver Conservation Commission for December 6th, 2017. Our first order of business is an appointment.
All those people out in the hallway.
Hi, Kyle and family, would you like to come in, please? Gonna roast you. Run up to the, yeah.
Thank you.
Sign yourself in, young man.
I didn't bring my pen tonight.
Come on, you're a scout.
Let's go.
Be prepared.
Let's go to a meeting with a pen. So, right, we have with us Kyle Rizzuto, member of, which scout troop are you?
I'm part of Troop 48.
48. Scout Troop 48, who has done mammoth amounts of work on the Cole property in revitalizing the trails. He's cleaned them. He's removed brush and logs. He's put in some benches. He's made some improvements and made plans for further improvements in places where the trails are suffering from breaks, like needing a large bridge. So it's a real pleasure to have somebody so community-oriented and fulfill such a great need for us. It's one thing for us to have the trails available for the community, but it's making sure that they're in shape for the community to use is another thing. So thank you, Kyle, very much.
And you can sign this. Certificate of appreciation. And when we saw you Saturday, I said that I would talk to Audubon. You know, so I sent them an email. So here's an email from him, and it's a couple of things about the camping. You know, he just wanted to know, anyway, a few things. So I'm just going to give you this and let you know what he's thinking about for the camping. But he thought it was great. Thought it was great what you're doing. Yep. And I do have more of these if you need them.
Oh, yeah.
I have a ton of them. Do you want some more now?
Yeah, I'll take it.
I wanted to thank you also for taking us out there on Saturday. I never realized how extensive the paths were, especially the orange one. It seemed to go on forever and loop back on itself. I'm still sore. But it was great and an eye-opener. You did a wonderful job out there. It really, it was easy to navigate, even though it's quite a bit hilly and things like that. But it was just, it was a great job.
Well, thank you. I definitely could need that. I need the exercise for that. So.
Don't we all?
Okay. So here's your certificate. And here's the thing from Audubon. He's concerned about a couple things like that. So I'll let you just answer those in this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, I want to thank you guys before I go. I mean, you guys had a huge part in this, allowing me to even undertake this project, and also Mr. Woods for allowing me to do this.
Yes.
And it has been an overwhelming response from the public, and just people are really appreciative. I want to thank the families of everybody that helped, and my Eagle advisor, Mr. Kevin Bradshaw, for helping me out all the way.
You're very welcome.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Just by way of pointing out why these improvements and markings are important, I want to say that the first time I went out and explored the trails completely on my own, I found myself on the Orange Trail going and going and going, and I finally came upon a man cutting wood, and I says, "Hey, how come you're cutting wood on the conservation property?" He says, "How come you're on my property talking to me about it?" The conservation property ends 100 feet back there. It's, "Oh, I'm sorry. So that's why the markings are very important. Okay.
Oh, and one other thing. I emailed the gentleman from DOT about the two locations of the fence. He emailed me back right away and sent my email to the maintenance department, and he's going to get back to me so that they may actually fix those holes in the fence.
I have a picture.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that'll definitely help.
Yeah, I have a picture too of that, where that trail comes along 44
good,
behind
okay.
the cement fence. where
Okay.
really that they should put some
All right, send those to me, and I'll
crossbars.
send those to him too, because he
Yeah.
sent it right to the maintenance department. It sounded like they were gonna do something, so.
Yeah, that looked like Main Street behind that concrete wall.
Yep.
So,
So good.
okay, next minutes for November 15th. Review them, please.
Thank you again, Kyle.
Good night now.
That took care of 3/4 of our audience.
Yeah.
Should have saved him for
Should've
last.
mentioned-
Nobody cares about your project.
Should have saved him for last. Would have been,
Don't you guys want to stay and hear the rest of the exciting news?
and listen to all this other stuff.
Oh, well.
I beat you to it. Couple things.
Does anyone see a need for changing the minutes as written?
I didn't see anything.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept them as written?
Wait a minute.
Oops,
That's
okay.
something.
Just one thing, almost at the bottom of page 2, the second paragraph from the bottom, where it says, with regards to the new school track, that's not really a new hearing. It's under the heading.
No, actually, they're gonna be filing probably.
Right, but it's under
Yep.
the heading of new hearing. I'm wondering if you just
Okay.
put
Oh.
discussion there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Discussion
Okay.
between the third from the bottom paragraph and the second.
Okay, you're right.
Because then you've got the school track, then you've got the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
meeting, et cetera. So I
Okay.
just think
So
that should
just-
be.
So a new heading.
Separate it out. Yeah.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hearings.
Good point.
All right, for
Let's
with
go.
regards to the new school.
Yeah,
track,
so
or-
right after the voted and
Discussion.
passed unanimously, so that's like, you could just say discussions.
Done.
Perfect, okay, that makes sense.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 15th as corrected.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 15th as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's passed unanimously.
I didn't even know,
Hey, right.
didn't actually read it. I didn't catch it, but that's all right.
Okay. Just a review of, in fact, we did a site walk on the dam, Tremont Street Dam that flows into the, what was that, Cranebrook Pond? Cranebrook Restaurant Pond?
Lower Sampson's.
Lower Sampson's Pond, okay.
That's what's-
So here's a copy of what John had to submit, you know, to the damn people. The,
Damn.
yeah, those damn people. Pictures of, you know, what he showed us the other day. Basically, he's just gonna cut some brush, and there's that one tree that he's gonna cut and not take the stump out, but just, you know,
Yeah,
loam
grind it.
over it and stuff, yeah.
Gonna grind it, yeah.
So that's
Yeah, I
what
thought
he
that'd
had to
be
show
crazy
them.
to take that tree of the stump
Yeah.
down. I mean,
I know.
just uproot the whole area.
Oh, I know it, because it's right on the slope.
Came up with that idea.
Yeah. They agreed with him.
Right.
I'm all set with that. I fixed it. So
Okey-doke.
This is just for us to look at.
Warm again.
That's the same side.
Oh, it's on the other side, yeah.
Yeah, this is on this.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's the tree.
And this is the tree. There we
Right.
go. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Works for me.
couple more minutes, we will start with our hearing
Oh,
for,
and then if you're available on the 19th,
oh, yes,
as far as, last I heard,
16th.
what did I say?
You said 19th.
Oh, it's supposed to be
Wetlands
19th.
Trust?
I think it's supposed to be 19th.
Think it is supposed to be 19th?
Let me make sure, though.
Okay.
I haven't heard back from, yeah, for the land that the Griffiths just gave us. you know,
Right.
Wildlands Trust is gonna be, like, in the CR with us, same as Audubon is on the coal. So they do a regular walkthrough. So if you wanna go, I'll let you know for sure, but I think it is the 19th.
All right, the
Which is like
16th
a
is
Tuesday.
a,
Is it a Saturday? or something?
Saturday.
Oh, okay, so it's the 19th then. That's Tuesday. It would be
Yes.
Tuesday before the meeting.
I get into my emails every day now. Just to let you know.
Okay, good. All right.
you read them?
Then I'll email you every day.
Delete, delete, delete. I found this great button. It says, check here to delete all.
And then you delete them all before you read any of them. I'll remind you every day.
Thanks.
But you'll get it every day.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, how's it going? Good to see you.
At this time, notice is hereby given in accordance with the Mass Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Carver Wetlands Protection Bylaw, that a public hearing will be held at 7:15 p.m. on Wednesday, December 6, 2017, in Meeting Room 1 at the Carver Town Hall, to hear the request for determination of applicability submitted by Victor Stolt Hansen Nielsen Holton for the installation of a small floating solar array on the reservoir/tailwater recovery pond located north of Purchase Street, west of Great Meadow Drive. The RDA is to determine A, whether the area depicted on plans and/or maps referenced is an area subject to jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act. C, whether the work depicted on plans referenced is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. And D, whether the area and/or work depicted on plans referenced is subject to the jurisdiction of any municipal wetlands ordinance or bylaws of the town of Carver depicted on reference plans. Project is located at 0 Purchase Street, Carver, Mass, map 55, lot 1. All interested parties are invited to attend. Copies of all plans, filings, and pertinent documents are available at the Conservation Commission office. This looks like at one point there was going to be a B in that RDAs to determine.
Well, the B is actually to confirm like the wetland line. Now, there's a couple of things that sometimes we don't always do.
Right.
Like one is to confirm the line, one is, and they
Okay.
didn't really ask us to do that. They just asked us, whether it was a resource area and whether the work applied. So yeah, the RDA is kind of confusing because it's an A, B, C, D, and they don't always
Right.
ask for everything. So that's kind of why it ends up to
Okay.
look like that, but I could just call it A and B instead.
Right, well, we could
Could
have
you just put B not applicable?
Yeah,
I
that
could put
could
A,
be.
yeah, A and B not applicable. Yeah, you're right.
instead of confusing me, no way.
I know it. We don't need anything else to confuse us.
No. So if we would have
Add that into the minutes.
Mr. Victor Stolt Nielsen Hansen, Stolt Nielsen Holton, pardon me, make his presentation.
Sign in?
Yes, please. Did we,
Okay,
you said
Okay.
something about a projection?
so, everything all right?
Go, proceed.
First, I'd like to say thank you very much to all the members of the Carver Conservation Commission and Brooke for taking the time to hear us this evening, review our application, and look at the site. So my name, like Jim said, is Victor Stolt Nielsen Holton. I am a managing partner with Sun 2O Partners. and we are leading this project. We're doing this project in conjunction with Cielo Terra International. They're the firm that provides the floating component of floating solar. And in addition to that, we're also working with Plymouth Solar, represented by Fred Paris. And Blue Wave Solar is a well-known solar developer across the state. And last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Steve Ward, who is the site owner, and I'm sure you all know Steve. So before we go into the specifics of the project, I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of background on floating solar in general, the concept and some history, and why we think Massachusetts is such a great state for it, and there's a fantastic opportunity for it. So floating solar isn't always intuitive to everyone. They'll kind of see electricity generation and water, water, does that really make sense? Which is understandable. But when you look at certain opportunities, and if you have the right technology, it can really be a fantastic way to achieve solar development. So Cielo Terra, our partners, saw that back in 2013, which is when floating solar really got kicked off. And the main market where it took place was Japan. It had three main components. It was space constrained, it had high electricity prices, and a strong demand for solar. So those components and the fact that there were a lot of rice paddies that had irrigation ponds were perfect for floating solar. And it did very well there. So following that success, the UK saw a similar success. With notably an installation on a large drinking water reservoir outside of London. It's a 6.6 megawatt installation, and you can actually see it as you're flying into Heathrow. If you look out, if you can see London to the west, you can see this large floating array in the reservoir. And now Cielo Terra is working on projects in California and hopefully Massachusetts. We think Massachusetts, again, has those three components that really makes an ideal floating solar market. It's space constrained, there's high electricity prices, and there's a strong demand for solar. So we saw that, and ourselves at Sun2O, in conjunction with Cielo Terra and some local stakeholders, worked with the DOER and the DEP to formulate guidelines and have floating solar be included in this next generation incentive program. So we thought, following that, the best way to really capitalize on this opportunity and see floating solar expand through the state was to do a pilot project. And that leads me to the pilot. So you have seen these blueprints, but I brought them. I forgot an easel. I apologize. I think I'll just stand up, if that's okay, and show them to you. Hope everyone can see that. So this was, again, included in the documents that I submitted. But basically the plan is to install a small floating solar array on the water holding pond. Oh, thank you, Steve, I appreciate it.
Should have brought the easel.
Thank you very much. A small pilot project for a floating solar array on the water holding pond off of Great Meadows Drive in Purchase. And you can it's okay. Again, kind of going to the rationale of why do a pilot project, we wanted to, one, kind of demonstrate to everyone how safe, how simple and effective the concept is, and also demonstrate how environmentally friendly it can be. And that involves involving local stakeholders and, importantly, regulators. An important part of what we were able to do with the DEP and the DOER in getting floating solar into this program was developing the guidelines about how it should be developed. And of those guidelines, a very important one is that floating solar should not go in wetland resource areas. So with that guideline, we wanted to find a location for the pilot which we believed would be in compliance with that. And so once we started looking for sites in conjunction with the Cape Cod cranberry growers, we were very fortunate to find a pond on Mr. Ward's property. When you look at it, this is really the ideal installation site for a floating solar array. That is a man-made operational water body that serves some kind of agricultural or industrial function and does not have a lot of natural features. And that is what this body of water is. So first, you can just see that it's a large open space. It is used for agriculture. The level of the water, or the water levels, fluctuate throughout the year. And then importantly, as per the fill removal permit, about 500,000 cubic yards of Carver coarse sand were removed from it in 2010, which really kind of constructed this water body, and is where we kind of lay our basis that this is a man-made operational water body. And again, that kind of just goes to any floating solar installation across the state and what was meant in the regulations. These installations are great for man-made operational water bodies. They're not meant for a pristine pond or lake or reservoir where there's a lot of other values in and of itself. This is just a large pit with some water in it that we want to put some floating solar panels on. Going to the actual technicals of the installation, the array is made up of 3 main components. You have the panels themselves. Those are just standard monosilicon Canadian solar panels, the same that you'd use on a ground mount. And the second and the most important component are the floats. So the floats are made of high-density polyethylene, which is a food-grade plastic. It's been used on, or this is the Alentaris technology. It has been tested by, for instance, the Independent Water Quality Control Center in the UK, and it was proven to be drinking water compliant. That's why it's gone on drinking water reservoirs. And it's really an ideal material. It's very durable. It's been shown to last in salt water for 30 plus years with minimal erosion. It is UV degradation resistant. It's really perfect for these kinds of installations. And the last component is the anchoring system. And that's just basically a screw, some chain, and a cabling system. All very simple. So to install the installation, the first thing that you do is you'll have a small onshore installation area that's just along the embankment, and it's really just, for this specific example, it's just the embankment basically as is. Maybe it requires a little bit of flattening. But that's a very temporary disturbance and quite minimal. So onshore, you will piece this thing together like Legos, and you'll put the panels on, you'll put the floats together, and once that's all done, you'll push the array out. It'll be floating. You'll push it into place. You'll hook it up to its anchoring points, and it's pretty much done. The only onshore impact are the anchoring points themselves, of which there will be 4, and those are very minimal. Again, it's just like a helix screw that's put in place, and with like either a light hydraulic hammer or just by hand. Very simple, and it basically just sits there. So just to sum everything up, we are very excited about the opportunity for floating solar in Massachusetts. We think that a pilot is definitely the best way to educate all relevant stakeholders on how floating solar works, how safe it is, and how effective it can be. And we therefore think that, kind of pursuant to the regulations we worked with the DEP to have in, this is the ideal location. It is a man-made operational water body that should not be considered a wetland resource area. And again, I just want to thank everyone very much for their time.
Thank you.
Fine. There was some talk that you might have a video presentation, but
That
didn't work out. Okay.
technical issues.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to send that around later, but it's just a
Okay, if you-
demonstration of the
yeah, if
installation.
So
you
you wanted to get a copy, right?
Yeah. And I was wondering if you'd mind this separate from here, but whether I'd forward a copy of that up to the climate action teams in Maine.
Absolutely,
But,
yeah. Without, absolutely. And just one important thing I actually skipped over. The installation we intend to videotape, and in addition to it just being a standalone installation that's not grid connected, we will have hopefully a time-lapse camera on this and some weights that are going to allow us to do some testing for kind of Massachusetts-specific weather conditions.
Okay. You said you looked at a lot of different places in Massachusetts before finally picking this pond. Were there others in Carver that you looked at?
Not too seriously. We have a lot of sites that we've identified that are ideal, kind of following the criteria of what we believe to be man-made and operational. But this was the one that we focused the most on.
Okay. I know that this one isn't for the test is not going to be on the grid.
Correct.
Let me backtrack. Let me go to another question first, then I'll come back to that one. I know on this pond that there is some flow through. You know, there's a ingress and an egress of the water, and one of the questions that I asked when we were out at the site visit was how the covering of the water with these panels. I believe that at one point I was told that if this were to become a real thing, that up to 50% of the
Exactly. Yeah.
water of the surface area, right? I'm just part of me is a little concerned about the effects that it has on water temperature, and concurrently or after that, the effect it would have downstream on things that grow in and along the banks of water if the water temperature were to drop. Now, I know that this doesn't affect what you're doing right now, and it doesn't affect what we're voting on tonight, but it's just something that
Further on down the line.
yeah, I'm just wondering if that's on the radar or if studies have been done.
So there, with regards to the effects of water temperature, I think there may be some studies underway, but there have been definitely studies done on water evaporation. So of course, if you're blocking a certain portion of the reservoir, there's going to be a reduce in the amount of water evaporation. We've worked with a lot of water agencies on these kinds of projects. We're not the fastest moving operations, but we're still in conversations with them. But a key benefit that many of them have actually seen is the potential that these will reduce the water temperatures, because if they're near roads, a lot of the runoff will be warmer than what they had wanted. Generally speaking, if you are shading a larger portion of it, it could reduce the water temperature. But for that, and for some, I'd say for generally speaking, for follow-on projects that are of course larger, each site requires its own analysis, and if that is seen to be as like one of the larger concerns, then that's absolutely something that would be addressed. And whether that's a specific study or some of the things you can do is you can install water flocculators, aerators that can help create some churn in the water. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I kind of, this is a great idea, and I think it's something that that growers would love to jump on board with, particularly with the state of the industry in recent years.
Absolutely.
And I just kind of worry about the daisy chain of consecutive growers on the same water source doing this on their reservoirs, and at the end of it, it's 5 or 6 degrees colder than it would have been prior to that. So it's just something that again, it doesn't affect what we're voting on tonight, but it's something that I think that we as a commission should be concerned with, or at least curious about, if not concerned.
I think that's a very valid thing to be concerned about, and definitely something that we would look to address if it became a concern.
Okay.
Well, if we were to authorize this, and for your sake it turns out to be successful, and you come back to us with a notice of intent, which is what I would imagine you'd have to come back with us with, you'll also have the answers for our questions we're asking tonight, like the temperature down, so forth and so on?
It's definitely something we would try to address, yes. Of course, I'd say that an important part is that the effects of a given installation can be different at each site. So you have to look at it from a site-specific perspective.
Yeah, water depth.
Yeah.
Well, you can understand what my
Yes,
my colleague's talking about is, a series of the same thing, and also the percentage of a pond being filled with them too concerns me. with reference, I don't know how 50% would affect the pond as opposed to 75%, as opposed to even more. Do you put it on anything that floats? It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, normally,
Sure.
how much of that pond that we're talking about, under normal circumstances, what percentage would be array?
So we would never try to develop something that goes above that 50% mark. There's two reasons for that. That's just
Ever?
Well, first off, in Massachusetts, one of the important things that we got into the SMART program regulations was the 50% coverage ratio. So we are bounded by the program at 50%.
Okay.
And in addition to that, the 50% is something that we've seen is like Cielo Terra has seen it with some of their California projects. It's usually a very good number to stick to. When you start to go beyond that, particularly, for instance, with some of these holding ponds, if there are fluctuations in the water level and you're trying to cover the whole thing, there's risks that if the water level goes down too far, you're going to have some of it start going up to the sides, and that can cause a lot of stress in the middle. So it also just like a traditional ground-mounted solar project, you want to give yourself some buffers for things that can happen.
I'm also concerned about at 50% what the issues would be with everything that lives underneath that 50%, because of the lack of sunlight and so forth. Now you say, oh yeah, we got little squares that open with light. I saw that demo. That ain't going to be enough light. So I am concerned about that. So I'm going to want to see some documentation on that, for sure. I'm not saying we have to have it for this trial if we decide to give it to you, but these are questions that I'm going to be asking for sure. I'm going to want definite answers on. I mean, I'm looking at it saying, okay, so the array kills how much of the vegetation underneath, the fish live off the vegetation, the fish eat the mosquitoes, yada yada yada. You know, I think you're stepping into a line there. But if you can show me that that's not affected, I can't wait to see that one. I don't have right now other issues. That's all I have to say about that.
I think an important thing too, like Victor said, these are all going to be site specific, so you have to really figure out if the pond that they're putting them on, I mean, it could be different than this pond. It could be what you might, consider a wetland resource area. So you kind of have to, that's like the most important.
But I think our questions would remain the same.
Oh,
the answers would be different.
Definitely,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Right.
Questions and everything would be different at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to have to take it on, if this expands, which I don't even want to go there yet. Each presentation will be different, for sure.
Yep.
And just if I could say to those concerns, again, it goes to what we're looking at as like a site for this. We believe it's a man-made operational water body where we think if there are those concerns, if there are a lot of concerns about what could happen to natural life, we would just want to avoid that opportunity because that's not what we believe these things are meant for. These are meant for operational water bodies where there's really not that to be concerned about.
I could see us going in favor of solar arrays and forgetting about the ecology. So
Absolutely.
that I don't want to miss.
Well, let me say that I believe that the solar arrays are an important part of the ecology. I think that the ponds would be a lot less desirable if they were next to a waste dump for a coal ash plant or the site of an oil spillage from a diesel fuel burning power plant. So that's why solar is attractive.
Oh, I agree. I think solar is attractive in its place.
Absolutely. And one of the key benefits here about floating solar done in the right place is that you're achieving a solar array, hopefully a pretty sizable one, course, where it makes sense, but that doesn't involve any clearing of land or clearing of trees. You're just making use of this open space, and that's really an attractive part of it.
So, if you're doing a solar array in it, you know, like this particular location, the sun is hitting in a little different area, but there are some, you know, tall trees. Would you cut the trees down to make the solar work, or?
Again, it's site dependent. Hopefully you wouldn't have to do that, but it could be a consideration.
Okay.
But it's a fair point.
It's this site, even if it were enlarged to 50%, would probably not need that because the trees are not, they don't cover the edges of it as much. Only about 1/4 of the perimeter has trees on it, and those are fairly low and they're fairly back from
I'm
the
not
edge.
saying this particular site.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's just, each site will be evaluated as it comes in. That's the big.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of you? If
Yeah.
if we approve this as it sits with the number of solar arrays they're putting on the pond, if they expand this, will they have to come before us for a notice of intent?
Yeah, they will. They'll have to
So
come.
any expansion of the
Change.
solar array will need a notice of intent.
I think even hooking it up to the grid at its current size would be.
That's probably correct, yeah.
So if you hook it up, you have to install poles and stuff like that to hook it into the, yeah, so there would be activity, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
there'd be other activities, so.
Yeah.
you could
They'd still, I just want to make sure that they don't just do
Yeah.
it or not.
Well, they actually they put that in this, and I talked to Victor about that, you know, saying that this was for this.
Demonstration only.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself again, and it doesn't really relate to this, but it does. While I have you here, I'm going to ask these questions
Absolutely.
because it goes forward. Are there currently? I believe there are, but I may be wrong. Are there currently limits on how much solar power the utility has to buy?
Yes, there are. So this new solar incentive program set a new target for how much Massachusetts will develop over the next, hopefully, 5 years. So that number is 800 megawatts, I believe. And they're hoping that that's going to take some time. But given the fact that there's been a little bit of a delay between the last program and this one, it could potentially go quicker. But as it stands, it's 800 megawatts.
Okay, so I mean that would be another part of your equation as far as overloading one certain area that if
Absolutely.
you can't sell it, you're not going to put it in.
Exactly, absolutely. That is definitely a very important consideration for these projects. Of course, is can you hook into the grid at that point at a reasonable cost,
Right.
Or a cost that will allow the project to work.
Right. Well, thank you. That's one of the many things that swim around up here. Okay, that's the last question on my list.
Good. I have no further questions. So, should we close the hearing?
So you would be issuing a negative determination.
All right.
You know, saying that this specific site's not a wetland resource area and that this will not have any impact. I mean, you could. If we were to,
Specific to the test and the size
Right,
of the array
right,
as it
right.
is right now.
Right.
yeah.
Well,
On the filing.
I'd like them to notify us when they start that, because I would love to see it.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
You'll let us know when you do the work next week. Next week.
If we decide to
Oh.
vote for it. We forgot the if part. But I would, if we do decide, I'd like to see it, see
Okay.
how it puts together and so forth. I'd like
Yeah.
to see that.
I will make a motion that we close the hearing on Zero Purchase Street.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to close the hearing on Zero Purchase Street as far as the demonstration power array. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass 3-0.
All right, and now I'll make a motion for a negative determination
Of applicability.
of applicability for the solar array at Zero Purchase Street.
Okay. And we need a second on that. Did you want to,
You want to bring this to a vote? Is that what we're doing here?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just need
We don't need a variance or anything.
No, we
It's
don't.
not, it's not a notice of intent.
All
It's
those in
not,
favor?
Right.
One of those?
it's not even applicable.
Second.
well,
You seconded.
So
yeah,
it would be-
didn't he ask us to,
Oh.
didn't Gary ask us to have an
Yeah,
NOI?
so you need a second, huh?
Yeah, I made the
For
motion.
what?
He made the motion, you need a second.
We need a second, yeah. Did you want to second it? I'll second it.
Thank you. I'm still a
Actually-
little
Yeah, so,
on that.
because this is only for
Right.
this project, so if
Right,
there was more work, then you can decide if you want to notice or.
okay. Yeah, I thought that McCutcheon had said that even for the demonstration project, that we should treat it as an NOI.
Oh, no, actually, he was the one who recommended the RDA.
RDA,
Gary,
okay, fine. I'm
From
sorry, I
DEP.
didn't
He was the one
remember.
who, yep.
Too many
Yep.
actions, okay. So, been moved and seconded to approve the project with the conditions by the agent, which are,
Which are basically, it's just for this project.
yes, project as it's been described. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I
Any
have my-
opposed?
I have my reservations, but I'll say aye,
I with a
because
reservation.
I'd like to see it.
Okay.
And
Which Indians are on
we'll
those
take a
reservations?
step further.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're good.
Thanks very
Yep.
much.
A
Yes.
negative thing is good.
Negative determination, and construction should hopefully begin
Yep.
next
Good
week.
enough.
So just let me know, Fred, and I'll let, you'll be there for a couple days, probably?
We're receiving some of the equipment now in our warehouse.
Oh, okay.
I believe that my name is Fred Paris, gentlemen. I'm Plymouth Solar Energy. We are a regional solar company, been in business for 18 years. We are a sub-S corporation with offices in downtown Plymouth, a warehouse in downtown Plymouth. And we have many jobs in Carver, Middleborough area. We kind of like want to own this region. We have done, just to give you a little background, we have done everything from wall mounted on a brick wall along the Cape Cod Canal to trackers that follow the sun. We've got significant ground mounts in the region. And we were well vetted by the company before we were selected to install this, and I'm really pleased that we've been selected. We look forward to putting in the first floating systems in Massachusetts.
How long is this test going to be good for?
Excuse me?
How long is the test going to happen, go for?
The winter?
Primarily over the winter.
Okay.
We really are going to look at the ice formulation. We are going to be taking temperatures. We'll have cameras on it to allow us to see the ambient weather as well as the rise and settling of the system. I imagine by spring, the official test, primarily for winter conditions, will be over. Whether there are subsequent tests after that, that will be up to Seal and Terra.
Could
It's
snow
my-
Saturday.
It's my understanding that these units, when the ice forms, they actually pop above the ice. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. The ice basically freezes around it.
Yeah.
As you'll get some
Boy.
heat, some of the water will melt, so they will basically just sit right on top of it.
I want to see this.
Yeah, the rounded shape of the float would indicate that as the ice forms, the float will be pushed up, just like a
See how that works.
ship.
With the weight on it, I want to see that.
So you'll be out there a couple days, you think? Or
We
be what?
have some shipments coming in as early as tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock.
We'd like, can you give us 48 hours notice as to when you're going to start installing it? So,
We certainly will. sir.
all right,
Okay.
that's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me know and I'll and then you guys can stop by whenever you can.
Yep.
You'll be a whole day, like you'll be there all day, a couple days, or?
I believe it'll take a couple days,
Yeah.
Especially with the monitoring and the video cameras
Yeah.
that we're putting up. And
Okay.
there is no electricity out there, so we will have actually solar-powered cameras that will be accessible 24 hours a day. We'll be able to take photos of very close up. We have measuring rulers that
Yeah.
will measure the the height of the floats above the water under various conditions. We have scales that will weigh the snow on top of the floats. And
Yeah, I can't wait to see I get the snow off of those.
And Steve's going to be monitoring all this out there. He's going to be the one.
Your lifeguard.
In between.
If I may ask one question, beyond this, is there any further word that we should expect from the DEP, either at the regional office as kind of
Well, they'll look at, we mail them a copy of our decision, so they'll look at that, and from what I got from Gary was, I mean, this was his, idea to file the request.
Sure.
And he did say that each one would be, site-specific, blah, blah, blah. So he'll look at the decision, and if they're okay.
He'll probably go
15
for it.
days
I mean,
review.
if we say, yeah,
Well,
it's a test.
There's a 10-day appeal period, so.
But, you know,
So there is a 10-day appeal period, so if they didn't like, what we decided, they could intervene
Okay.
and appeal it, and then look to issue, a superseding.
superseding order of condition, yeah.
I have a
Wouldn't even be a
feeling-
superseding order, would it?
It will be a superseding determination of applicability.
Determination, yeah.
So they come and review
You're
it
right.
again themselves, like go to the site and,
Yeah.
but from what I got from him, he,
I don't think
and they
they'll
gave
do
him
it.
all the information you gave me about the, the earth removal permit.
I
and-
don't think they'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, they
I don't
probably
see them
won't.
doing that.
They
It's hard
probably
to, hard to predict, but generally,
Yeah.
they seem to be more cooperative and more understanding than
Yeah.
they have been in the past.
And you had kind of gotten together when they did the whole policies and,
Exactly.
yeah.
And we have a call with them on Friday regarding this project, just to make
Oh,
sure
okay,
everyone-
so
Oh.
Down in Lakeville, you gotta go to Lakeville?
I have not now.
are you talking to Gary Maycutt? Is he-
I think he may be involved.
Yeah.
I know that the heads of the regional office are involved.
Yeah, Jim Holler and, yep.
Okay, well, again, thank you all very much. Very excited about this project. Would love to see all of you come out and take
I'd
a
like
look
to
at
see
the
how it comes
installation.
out.
We will.
And
Thank you.
Curious.
Thank you for bringing it to Carver.
thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be
Thanks,
famous.
Steve Ward, for taking on the job.
Thank you very much, Steve.
You'll make us famous.
Oh, don't.
Okay.
Go to Plimpton if you wanna get famous.
Okay. So that's our business for tonight, right?
That's it?
All right, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn.
I think
Any
we're done.
discussion? Ifs, ands, or buts? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous.